Grief has always been human, but the tools we use to survive it are changing. Welcome. I'm Amy Lindner-Lesser, your host, and I'm glad you're here either for the first time or for the 20th time to Introspection, Grief to Growth. Today, I want to talk about something that feels incredibly modern and at the same time, incredibly tender. AI, artificial intelligence, and grief. If you had told me 10 years ago that, maybe even 5 years ago, that people would be turning to artificial intelligence for comfort, reflection, or even companionship during grief, I might have dismissed it as science fiction. Actually, I think I would have done it, not might, or even worse, as something cold, clinical, and even disrespectful. Yet here we are 5 or 10 years later, and people are turning to AI. They're turning to AI when they can't sleep and using it to help with journaling. They're asking it questions they're afraid to ask their friends. They're using it to write letters to their loved ones who have passed away. Some are even interacting with AI versions of people that they've lost. So the question today isn't whether AI is showing up in grief. It already is. The real questions are, what can AI actually offer someone who's grieving? Where does AI genuinely help? And where does it quietly or maybe even dangerously cross a line? And that's what I would like to explore today. Not from a tech expert's pedestal, because God only knows that's not me. Not from fear or hype. And surprisingly, I'm not afraid of AI. But from the messy human reality of grief, and from my perspective as a grief and life transitions coach, originally trained as a social worker. So, why does grief seek out tools? Well, grief is isolating. Even when we're surrounded by people, grief can make us feel out of sync, misunderstood, emotionally inconvenient, like how you feel doesn't matter, or like you're carrying something too heavy for conversations. It can make you feel like an extra, an add-on, like almost like a nuisance. And there are moments, often late at night, when you don't want to call anyone. You don't want advice. And you don't want to explain yourself. You just want somewhere to put the thoughts. That's where AI tends to enter the picture. Unlike humans, AI doesn't get tired. It doesn't need to go to sleep. It doesn't get tired of you repeating the same question. It's not afraid of your emotions. You can write or dictate whatever it is you're feeling. And it never says you should be over this by now. And for some people, that neutrality feels much safer than humans. Doesn't mean that they're weak. It means that grief is doing what grief does. It seeks containment. Now, how can AI actually help? Let's be clear. AI is not therapy. It's not counseling. And it's not coaching. It's not love. And it is not, I'm going to say this again, it is not a replacement for human connection. But it can be a tool. And here are some places where AI can be genuinely supported when it's used carefully. 1. Reflection without judgment. AI can act like a mirror, similar in some ways to competent coaching, counseling, or therapy. You can say to AI, I miss them, but I'm also angry. I feel relieved, and I'm ashamed to feel that way. Or I don't recognize who I am anymore without them. Or this role that I'm now playing in the case of ambiguous grief with a loved one who has dementia or another form of a chronic illness that has changed them. I don't want to go see them. I'm I'm feeling guilty about that. I'm grieving, but they're still alive. And when you do that to AI or with AI, nothing recoils. That matters when you're sorting through complicated grief. But I do want to add that if you're working with a competent, caring professional, they won't recoil either. 2. Language when you have none. Grief is wordless, and we have trouble coming up with the words to describe feelings that we feel. AI can help write letters that they'll never send or you'll never send. It gives shape to feelings that you can't yet speak and maybe not even identify. It can help articulate grief when your nervous system is feeling overwhelmed. Not because AI understands grief and it doesn't understand feelings, but because language itself helps regulate emotion. Putting something into words and getting it out there helps. 3. Gentle structure for grief. When grief collapses time and routine, AI can offer journaling prompts, grounding exercises like breathing, putting your feet on the floor, and practicing special breathing exercises, memory keeping structures, and reminders to take care of yourself, to eat, to sleep, and to breathe. Sometimes we need those things, but that's not healing. What it is supporting the conditions that are needed for healing. The real risks of AI, and this matters. Let's talk about the parts we can't romanticize. Because grief is a vulnerable state, and vulnerability always deserves protection. Risk 1, emotional dependency. Because AI is always available and grief often looks for constant soothing, we can come to depend on it. Grief emotions need to be expressed, not just regulated, soothed, or quieted. And there's a risk that AI can prematurely soothe what actually needs to be felt. If someone begins to rely on AI as their primary emotional companion, especially instead of human beings, that becomes a problem. Grief needs relationship and not just responsiveness. It needs feedback. It needs someone else to go back and forth with. Risk number 2, when avoidance is disguised as coping. AI can make it easier to stay inside grief without moving through it. Endless conversations, endless reflections, endless revision. And at some point, grief does require integration and not infinite looping. It's never going to be fully resolved because grief doesn't go away. That's the price we pay for loving someone or something. However, it can get easier, and the episodes of intense grief will become fewer and farther between if we integrate it. We learn to live with our grief, almost like we learn to live with the lint that might be in our pocket or the coin that might be in our pocket. Number 3, simulating the dead. And this is the most ethically loaded area. AI mimics our dead loved ones using text, voice, or personality traits. And when that happens, it raises hard questions. Are we honoring the dead or refusing to accept their absence? Does it delay our mourning? Does it prevent us from navigating forward in our lives? And who owns the identity of someone who's gone? Obviously, AI doesn't have access to that except by what we share with it. And that's the question. Grief requires us to reckon, to deal with irreversibility. And anything that erases that truth may feel comforting, and it will complicate healing. So let's look at a healthy framework for using AI in grief. Where is that line in the sand? Here's a grounding principle that I return to. AI should support your grief, not replace your relationships, your body, or your reality. Some helpful boundaries are: use AI as a supplement, not a primary support. Pair AI reflection with human connection, even if those connections are imperfect. Notice when using AI feels regulating instead of numbing. And if it starts with replacing real world engagement, if you're not going out, if you're not being around other people, if you've become a hermit, pause. Grief doesn't need fixing. It needs witnessing. And sometimes AI can help hold space briefly, but it cannot walk the road for you and should not walk the road with you. Set your boundaries clearly with the humans you interact with. Make sure that you keep your own agency, that you set your boundaries, such as, I don't want to discuss this today, or I'm okay making my own decisions. No, I don't really want to go see that movie. You go and enjoy yourself. Boundaries are for protection. They are not, though, to create a fortress inside where you'll live. It's important to stay connected with the outside world. Grief is ancient. Technology is not. And every generation has used the tools available to survive loss, like letters, rituals, photographs, voicemail, memorials, shrines, making a quilt out of somebody's t-shirts or clothing. AI is simply the newest mirror that we're holding up to grief. So let's reframe the question. Instead of saying, is AI good or bad? I want to leave you with a more personal set of questions. How am I using AI as a tool to express my feelings or to avoid them? When does it support me? And when does it numb me? And if I'm being honest, fully honest, is AI helping me stay connected to my life, my body, and my relationships? Or is it helping me stay at a distance from them? There are no perfect answers here, just honest noticing. And we're not going to behave the same way all the time. Try not to rely on AI for a definitive answer. AI is also not perfect. While it is not human and doesn't make as many errors as people do, it does make errors. Be careful. If AI helps you put words to pain so you can eventually share it with others, that can be a bridge. If it helps you remember to eat, to sleep, to breathe, that's support. And if it helps you feel less alone temporarily, that's human. But grief still asks the same things it always has. Presence, be present to where you are, your situation, the reality. Time, know and be present to the time of day, how long it's been since your life quake, how long you're feeling helpless. Emotion, identify and feel those emotions. Be in relationship with others. If you've lost your person, I understand finding others to be in relationship with is difficult. It can start with professional help. It can start with joining a group and having others who are going through similar things as you. It can also start with reaching out to a friend and say, let's go get a cup of coffee. Would you have lunch with me today? And with meaning. And here's the part that I want to say gently and clearly. Avoidance can feel easier in the short term, but in the long term, it is not a solution. Unfelt grief has a way of showing up whether you want it to or not, no matter how many sumo wrestlers you sit on top of it. It's still going to come back up, and often at inconvenient times. When it is not felt, it also sometimes comes up in harmful ways through misdirected anger, self-criticism, self-abuse, unhealthy coping behaviors like drugs or alcohol or food. Grief doesn't disappear because we avoid it. It just waits. And if you're listening to this and think you might need a place where you can be heard without judgment and supported in finding healthier ways to cope and to begin imagining what could come next for you, I'm here. I'd love to walk alongside you. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to rush. And you certainly don't have to have it figured all out now. If you'd like, reach out to schedule a Life Behind Limbo free call. It's simply a space to be heard, to breathe, and to do some gentle exploration of what support might look like for you, as well as what a future might be. So thank you for being here. If this episode stirred something in you, that matters. Remember, you're not alone. And if you know somebody who's going through this right now and you think that this might help, please share it with them. I'd love to be there for them too. Thanks a lot for watching or listening. And remember always to find gratitude in a moment, no matter how difficult it might seem. Thanks a lot. I care about you. And together we can get through this. Bye for now. If you liked what you heard on this podcast and want to hear more, please follow us and tell your friends. You can also find me on Facebook at Amy Lindner-Lesser, Grief to Growth Life Coaching, and on LinkedIn at Amy Lindner-Lesser.